Well, hello, everybody. This is Unfound Live for February 24th of 2025. What a week it has been. And I say that in like the worst way possible, not worst way possible, but in a bad way. And I'm going to tell you all about it here. That'll be the personal news section of this live show tonight. I do have a fantastic show lined up for all of you. As you can see in the headlines, I want to talk a little bit about capital punishment, not the political side of it, but kind of things that are changing a little bit. There's a news story that coming out of Idaho that kind of caught my eye, and I said, well, I want to talk about that a little bit. So we're going to do that. We're going to also talk about a guy who went missing, and his car was found burned in Cleveland. And also, there's been a Florida mystery. I wanted to get to this last week, ran out of time. A Florida mystery that is solved through DNA. And I have a bunch of other stuff that I've lined up. We'll see how much of it I get to tonight. Maybe all of it. The rest of all of the stuff, partially, we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see how well I manage the time tonight. But to start off, I want to remind all of you to please give this show a thumbs up. Please hit the like button. Share it. Do whatever you got to do. I would deeply appreciate it. It helps us with the YouTube algorithms on YouTube. Please consider supporting Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound podcast, paypal.me/Unfound podcast. If you were watching on YouTube this evening, you can hit the super chat button below if you'd like to support what we do here that way. And then also you can join by the YouTube channel and get some things that other people don't get by hitting the join button that is below the screen if you are watching on YouTube. Of course, some apps and things do not show that join button, so you might have to actually go to a computer to do that. But thank you all for showing up tonight. Yeah, it has been a week. And here's how it all went down. To be honest, before the live show even started last week, maybe like 2 hours so before it got started, so 7 p.m. my time, kind of had something like going on, like stomach wise or something. And I have to admit that at one point I was a little concerned whether I was going to be able to do last week's show or not, but then it kind of went away. We got to like the 8 o'clock hour to 8:30, and I actually started feeling okay again. I was like, oh, that's weird. Maybe it was something that I ate, and that was that. So I did the show last week, and I felt fantastic. I thought I did a fantastic show last week. There was nothing going on with me, any pain-wise or anything. And got through with the show at 11 o'clock, when it usually ends. And according to my sleep schedule, the earliest I can go to bed at night is midnight. I don't have to go to bed at midnight. If I'm tired, I can go to bed at midnight. But if I'm tired, I'm not allowed to go to bed before that. However, if I'm not tired at midnight, there's nothing that says I have to go to bed at that point. The only rule with the sleep schedule was that I have to be out of bed by like 6:45 in the morning. That is the sleep schedule that I had at this point last week. So it got to be midnight. So just an hour after I signed off last week. And I was feeling fine and I was tired. I went into bed and fell asleep like no problem. No problem at all. But then, so I fell asleep. I woke up and I still don't know what time it was because I don't look, I've gotten into the good, what I would call a good habit. I don't look at clocks at night these days. After I go to bed, if I wake up in the middle of the night, I don't look at any clocks. Next time when I go to bed, the next time that I look at a clock is when I'm ready to get out of bed in the morning. That's it. That's what I've been doing. Well, I went to bed, fell asleep pretty fast, but my perception is that I was not sleeping for very long. That was my perception. It very well could have been I was. It might have been I was in sleep for 2 hours. But my perception at the time was that I wasn't sleeping for very long. I woke back up and I was shaking from head to toe as badly as I have ever shaken in my life. And I have to admit that I was shaking so much that I was actually wondering, is this really the chills or is this something else? Is this like a nerve thing or something? That's how bad it was. I mean, it was crazy, crazy, crazy shaking. And I was like, well, this can't be good. And in addition to the chills, I could feel, this is something going on here. Like I said, I wasn't sure it was the chills, but I was shaking. So I came out, once again, not knowing what time it was. And I came out here into this room here, and there's a couch back to the left of where I'm sitting here. I sat on that couch and I put one blanket on. I put another blanket on. And I sat there in the dark, shaking for like 4 hours. No TV on, nothing. And eventually it started to ease up and everything. But at that point, and I was happy about that because I was like, okay, this is just the good old fashioned, good old fashioned chills of, I guess I'm getting sick. This is just the good old fashioned chills from the flu. But I sat there. I was shaking for a good it was a while. It was hours. And I finally did fall asleep on the couch out here. But that started me being sick. And I'm still not, you're going to probably hear me cough it. Something, before I'm still prone to some hacking coughing here. But that started me being sick. And I was, it's not maybe the worst flu I've ever had, but it was pretty potent. But that's usually how it goes for me, in that, when I get the flu like that, it's usually hits me. It doesn't like ramp up. It's like really like 1 second I'm fine. And then the next second I'm really sick. I don't kind of crescendo into it or kind of ramp up or anything. When it happens, man, it hits hard. And it usually means, though, that the first day of it is probably going to be the worst. And after that, it's going to kind of continue to get better. I'm not going to be a little sick, a little more sick the next day, a little more sick. And then like 3 days in or 4 days in is when it really hits me hard. I'm not that flu guy. It's the worst at the beginning. And so it was bad. Tuesday, no fun. No fun at all. The only nice thing I can say is I never did end up getting any sore throat, never had any aches and pains, never any stomach stuff. I could continue to eat, but everything up in, other than my throat, everything up in this part of my head was no good. And then in addition, seriously, I would go from chills. I'd be sweating. And then I have the chills back and forth, like every hour, flipping back and forth. And at one point, I was keeping track of my heart rate. I forget what day it was. Was it Wednesday? And I was, of course, doing it. I'm just sitting on the couch. I could do nothing. Although I was getting a little Unfound work done, but I was miserable, completely miserable. But there was, I think it was Wednesday, my heart rate was like 135 beats a minute for like hours. Now, of course, that's like workout, 135 beats a minute. That's like gym workout on the treadmill rate. But I'm just sitting there. That was how much my body was like amped up in trying to defeat this virus. And I was keeping track of my temperature. My temperature, at least me keeping track of it, never went up to 100, but it was at like 99.8 for like 3 days in a row or something like that. And of course, when you get the flu, your heart rate starts, goes up because that circulates more, causes you to breathe more. Oxygen gets into the blood, and that's one of the ways that your body defeats, a virus. That's one of the ways it does it. So my heart rate was way up. My body temperature was up. I was flipping back and forth between shivering in the chills and sweating. And finally, I would say somewhere, I think midday Thursday is when I finally started feeling like, all right, I think this is easing off at least a little bit. And then we got into Friday, into Saturday, and still kind of feeling a little flu-y. And today it's been pretty good, but like I said, I'm still tired as I'm talking to all of you here tonight. Still very tired. And I still have this cough. I'll be fine. And all of a sudden I'll start hacking. This cough comes out of nowhere. So this is what I'm still dealing with a week later. But wow, it was no fun. Now, like I said, though, I was happy. I mean, I hate sore throats. Didn't have a sore throat, but had all sorts of sinus stuff, sinus headaches, really bad. Blowing my nose a lot. It was no fun. And like I said, the last time you saw me on here, of course, for the live show last week, this all started just no more than a few hours after you saw me in the live show last week. You can go back and look at me. I felt fine at the end of the live show. Just a few hours later, I'm just shaking like nobody's business. It was bad, but I guess I was due because I didn't. Usually, the way it happens is I get, the last 2 out of the last 3 years, or maybe even 3 years in a row, when I've gone up to see my dad, I've gotten sick up there. And that's really miserable because it's really cold and his floor of his place is cold and it's cold outside and everything. That makes it even worse. But, I've been up there and I've gotten kind of the same thing. This is the first time I've gotten it here in Florida, but I didn't get it when I was up seeing my dad this year. So I guess I was due, I guess. But then I started talking to all of you out there, when people were finding out that I was sick, because I was getting messages from people. And it sounds to me like I got off kind of easy compared to many of you. I've had people, my buddy Doug told me that he was had the flu for like 11 days. Many of you know Marty. I don't think he's in here tonight, but he's in the chat. He was telling me about how he had fought the flu for quite a bit. Got all sorts of stories. And I have to admit, it doesn't seem like my experience was I got off a little light. But really the way it went this time usually is the way that it goes for me. It's usually like 3 days of misery and everything then starts to kind of get back on track. As far as fever coming down, heart rate coming down, no more chills or sweating and things like that. But the first 3 days are usually maxed out bad. And they were. Now, the good thing about all of this is I've certainly learned to sleep. The last past week, I've slept like I've never had any sleep issues. Of course, I was sleeping in the day. I was getting a lot of sleep at night eventually after the chills went away. And so that was really, really nice. And that even continued through this weekend and last night. So maybe I'm finally seeing the light on that. And like I said, as I talk to you right now, I am feeling tired. I don't know if I look like it, I've done a lot of work today. I took like maybe a 5-minute snooze this afternoon, I'll admit, but got quite a bit of unfound work done today. But so maybe that has something to do with it. But I am feeling a little fatigued and sleepy, so I'm hoping that's going to bode well for my sleep tonight. But I've gotten a lot of great sleep over the past week, even despite being sick. But I have been miserable. It has been absolutely, absolutely miserable to sit in here, not really, like I said, I think I got some work done last week, reaching out to some people and doing a couple interview outlines and everything, but only for short periods of time. Otherwise, it's been me sitting on the couch, either watching Amazon Prime, trying to find movies that I haven't seen in a while or something interesting, or taking a snooze. That's been my life since last Monday. So there you go. And I'm still not back to 100%. I'm probably 80% right now. Simply because I still have this cough and just still continuing to feel tired. So let's see who, now that I'm about almost 20 minutes into, let's see who is here tonight. Hello, Karen. Charlie, what's going on? Good to see you. Yep, I am back. Hello, Amy. Hello, Kathy. Lisa said, good evening to you, Lisa. Glad you're feeling better. Yeah, I'm on the mends. I just hope it continues. I really want to get back to going back to the gym. And, I think this last week, even because I've been able to eat, but I haven't been able to do anything, I've put on a couple pounds. So I want to get back to the gym and everything. Thanks, Charlie. Neighborly, what's going on? Kathy says flu is the worst. Hello, Taylor. What's going on? First time joining the live chat. Is that right? Well, welcome. Taylor says, I just started Unfound from the beginning and I started Unfound from the beginning and I just got caught up to the most current episodes. That's a lot of listening, Taylor. Wow. Good for you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for putting in all that time, Taylor. I'm doing better now, D. Thanks for asking. It seems like you have a great community. Yeah, we have some pretty good listeners, Taylor. I think so. Taylor says, I've been binging them. I'm stay-at-home mom, so I listen when I clean, cook, drive, all the things. It's definitely taken me over 6 months to get through these episodes. Yeah, that sounds about right, Taylor. A lot of content on the YouTube channel too, Taylor. Kathy responding back. You have a daughter. Mary Jane says, oh, wow, that's a crazy heart rate. Going back to what I said about 135 beats a minute. I know, Mary Jane, it was a little scary. I mean, it's really weird to be sitting on the couch, not doing anything, and you really can't tell. And you put your hand up to your pulse, to your neck, where you can feel your heart rate, and you can just feel it motoring. Even though you're not doing anything, you're just sitting there. Yeah. And like I said, of course, that would usually be a really, really bad sign, but that's what the body does. When you get sick, it ups the heart rate, increases the oxygen content, and that's one of the ways gets the blood flowing and gets everything working in there. That's one of the ways to defeat a virus. And of course, that's, when you have a fever, that's your body's defense against the virus, because the virus, if it's in your body and it's living in there, means that it likes your regular body temperature of whatever that would be. Of course, 98.6, but everybody's body temperature varies a little bit. So when it senses something like that, it ups it, because the virus most likely cannot live in the body at a higher temperature. That's why your body does that. If you don't know why you get fevers and things, that's one of the body's defense mechanisms. Of course, it can get too bad. You get up into the hundreds and can be very dangerous. But it doesn't take too much of a temperature increase in your body to kill a virus. It just takes a little time. Because viruses can live in only a very, very specific kind of environment. And when you up the temperature, you can defeat it. It just takes a little time. Of course, it depends on how efficient your body is. And when it comes to the flu, I have to say, I think my body has been pretty efficient. But man, it sucks. Taylor, I listen so much when Ed does his intros, he says, and this is Unfound in unison with him. Yeah, I got that down, kind of some timing there, Taylor. Kind of, I try to be consistent on that. Thank you for noticing. Kathy, oh yeah, okay, talking about ages, you have a baby, yeah. Okay, Lisa, I should have gone to the ER about night 4 of your flu. Wow, cannot get a good breath, which made me panic and made it worse. Just coughing now. Wow. Yeah, Lisa, I have to tell you, that sounds way worse than what I had. I didn't have any problems breathing. The only thing, probably the heart rate being up for that long kind of did catch my attention, to be honest. But being that I didn't feel, it wasn't like I thought my heart rate was like out of control, like arrhythmia or anything. It was very consistent. And I didn't have any chest pains or anything like that. So that was really the only thing that caught my attention. Of course, the chills at the beginning did too, because like I said, there was, for just at least a little while, I was thinking, is this just the chills and me getting sick? Or is this something neurological? Because I'm sure all of you know, if you have some weird neurological condition, that can make your body really, really shake too, and has nothing to do with the flu or anything at all. So when I woke up out of the sleep and I was shaking like that, I was like, what the hell's going on? And I have to admit, when it started easing, I was like, oh, I'm just getting the flu. I've actually kind of, in a way, I guess, felt relieved that, oh, I'm sick. I have a virus. This is the flu. This isn't something else. And still ended up being horrible. But I think you know what I mean here. Yeah. Kathy says, everyone sounds sick. I think maybe it's just because I was sick this past week, but man, I encountered quite a few people commenting about having the flu, and So maybe it's just anecdotal. I don't have any statistics. It's completely anecdotal, but maybe this was a particularly bad flu year. I don't get a flu shot. I don't. I have to admit, I don't know if they really work anyway. But I've never gotten a flu shot, so I don't know about that. But my perception is that this flu season has been worse than many. And I'm not saying that just because I got sick. It's just all these other people that I've heard have gotten sick more than I can remember in past years. But maybe that's not true. I don't know. Hello, Joanne. What's going on? Taylor says, my daughter cracks me up when she says it with you in the intro. She calls you that guy who tells you about true crime. That's a good definition for me. I like that. I am the guy that tells people about true crime, Taylor. That's a good definition of me. I'll take it. Taylor says flu shots are whatever strain they predict will be most prevalent that season. They're not for all strains. Thank you for educating me there, Taylor. I'm not sure I knew that. So, that's what's going on with me since last Monday. I've still managed to get some good work done. Hoping to do maybe an interview this week, kind of get back to doing new episodes. So I'm excited about that. And I did the latest episode of Unfound now. So a very recent disappearance that I analyzed, talk about. I did that today. Reaching out to people. So I've been able to do some things since, even though I was sick, but, because, it's one of those things you hate. You're sitting there on the couch. You can't go anywhere. I mean, the last time I was in my car, I don't even think I drove my car last Monday. So that might've been last Sunday that I drove my car. I didn't drive my car again until Saturday, 2 days ago. So I was in here. I didn't even go outside. Once I got sick Tuesday morning, I didn't even go outside until Saturday. And so you're sitting in here and you'd like to get some stuff done. But as you all know, when you get the flu, I mean, you feel like crap anyway, but it's hard to concentrate. It's hard to keep your mind on things. And it's easy to get kind of interrupted. And of course, you're tired and everything. So I was happy. The work that I did get done over the past week, I was happy to get it done considering the situation. So that's what's been going on with me. So I hope everybody's week has been better than mine has been. But like I said, maybe the side effect, and I even talked about this with my sleep therapist this morning, is that, boy, I really discovered my sleep again. That anytime I wanted to sleep over this past week, man, my body was just all ready for it. There was no lying around staring at the ceiling. It was like, oh, you want to go sleep? All right, go ahead. Enjoy it. So that was nice. And we'll see if I can continue that as I get back to being healthy again. But like I said, that's not today. I'm still like 80%. So I'm guessing it's going to be probably at least a couple more days. Really, the final decider would be this cough. I just want this cough to go away. And we'll see when I can feel like I'm sure I'll be fine by Wednesday to feel comfortable to go to trivia, because I couldn't go last week. Man, there was no way. So hello, Fishing. What's going on? And Stephanie, you're here too. Good to see both of you. Good to see you. All right, let's get into the topics of tonight's live show. Once again, I want to remind all of you, if you are watching on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up, like it, share it, subscribe to the channel. I know some of you may be watching on Facebook, so you can give a thumbs up or a little heart or whatever over there on the Facebook page. I would appreciate that as well. Where do I want to start with some things? Maybe I'll go back to the Unfound Now. Then the newest Unfound Now that will be released within the next couple of days. Of course, today's the 24th. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, is the recent disappearance of Belva Day. Yes, that's her first name, Belva, Belva. She is a 95-year-old who went missing at the beginning of this month in Arkansas. She and her car went missing. So I picked her disappearance out as this month's Unfound Now. So be looking for that right here on the YouTube channel within the next couple of days. Please do that. Now, as far as the Found episode, and that's, of course, for Patreon supporters and YouTube supporters. That's not for all the general public. If you'd like to listen to all of the Found episodes, you'll have to sign up at patreon.com at the $5 a month level, or hit the join button for YouTube to watch any of those, or at least listen to them. Watch, I guess, technically listen to them. If you don't know what the Found series is, I started it a couple years ago. This is where I look at a disappearance that eventually got solved. So I call it From Disappearance to Discovery. And we're about, 2 years into that almost now. And this month, I've already written it out. I've not recorded it yet. We're looking at the disappearance to the discovery of a rock star. He went missing and then he was found. So I take a look. So, of course, as being, of course, a rock and roll fan myself, and I had heard about this case before. It was interesting to look at it at least a little more deeply than I ever had. So for all of you Patreon supporters at the $5 a month level or above, and all of you people who are members of the YouTube channel, please be looking for that within the next couple of days. Also, coming up here in March, although I don't have the date in front of me, the next Dr. T show is coming up where I appear on her channel. And I think the plan for March is to first do an anatomy of a disappearance first. So that will be that. We do that once a semester just to continuing the education. You know how important that is to me. And I will once again use myself as the missing person. I will create a scenario in which I go missing. I try to be different with it every time. And I'll go step by step through what usually happens under those circumstances. There we go. There's that cough. Of course, you know, with the Dr. T show, it's always on Thursdays. So, but I'm just not sure what Thursday it is. All I can say for sure is it's not next Thursday. I'm guessing it's more into the interior of March. But I will let you know in plenty of time. Stephanie says, happy you'll be putting out videos again. Yep. I did last month too, Stephanie. So if you missed the Unfound Now from last month, please check that out. All right, let's move on to the news section, the non-Unfound stuff. I want to revisit, I've talked about that Toronto plane crash, or Toronto plane crash, and I'm sure by now most of you have seen the video. I mean, rarely do you get a video of a plane, a big plane crash like that is so clear? If you've seen it, it just shows that. And I'm talking about the one where everybody survived. The plane flipped over, but everybody survived, all 60 some people in the snow. But a pilot in another jet that was waiting to take off filmed the jet come right down. It goes from like the left to the right part of the screen, from left to right. And man, you see it hit hard and you see it roll over and all the smoke and everything else. Rarely do you get a video of a big jet crashing like that is just right there. Usually it's some grainy security video, or it's pictures afterwards or something like that. You get to see the whole thing, which is, I don't think that had come out at the point that I did the show last week, where I talked about that crash and kind of made a prediction, a guess as to what probably happened. But now that I've seen the video, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get that one right too. Now, if you've watched that video, or if you haven't, please, if you find it, once again, I know sometimes watching things like that can be traumatic, and there are a lot of people out there that have fear of flying anyway, and they don't need, that's the last thing they need to watch. If that's you, then don't bother, please. Don't do that. But if you've seen the video, or you're going to try to find it now, once again, it's fairly clear to me that you can even see it when the plane gets really close to the ground, is that the wings are not level. They're not. It's, if you're looking at the screen, it's not level. It's kind of the right side of the jet seems to just be a little bit lower to the ground. And then what happens? It just jams the right rear landing gear into the runway so hard. And it just collapses it. And once that wing touches the ground, once a wing touches the ground on a jet like that, you're going for a ride. You just are. Of course, it's collapsed, so you're not on the wheels, the tires on there anymore, and you're down on. Anything can happen. And if the wing digs into the ground, you get what happened. Of course, that wing ended up breaking off. Thing rolled over. And fortunately, that might have been a blessing in disguise that the wing did break totally away, because that's on those jets, that's where a lot of the fuel is stored. So the wing's left behind, the fuel's left behind. And the other wing fortunately stayed intact, which meant that the fuel in that wing didn't spray everywhere. So that's really why everybody was able to get out of that plane. And you can even see the plane. There weren't any fire marks on it, even though it lost a wing, and you did see kind of explosions and everything. All the gas and everything poured out on the runway well behind where the wreck ended up being. So fortunate. Just so fortunate. But I think I'm going to get that one right. They just weren't lined up. They weren't what they call on the stabilized. It wasn't a stabilized approach. And in watching some analysis of some actual pilots, they said that it does seem like the plane came down a little early. It did land on the runway, but very early. And one of the things that's, they made a point of saying about that CRJ jet is that, the landing gear is not that tall. That is a jet that sits very, very close to the ground. It's very much like a 737, Boeing 737. They also sit very close to the ground. In contrast to, you look at the landing gear for like a 757, which is a little bit bigger jet. That landing gear is very tall because the engines are bigger. So it needs more ground clearance. But what does that mean? It means if you do have any upsets like that upon touchdown, being that the wings are a lot closer to the ground, they're more likely to hit the ground. And that also was a contributing factor, I think, in this crash as well. But man, when I saw that and I saw that they were not level and it comes down and it just jams that right landing gear into the ground, that's no good. But it just shows you're not, once again, not to scare everybody, but this is one of those things where, you're not safely at the airport until the jet is parked at the gate. You have to remember, taking off and landing are the most dangerous parts. Now, how dangerous? We know flying is very safe. But if you're just looking at air travel, landing and taking off, those are the two most dangerous times. And you can look at all of these flights, these crashes that we've had recently. Look at them. In Washington, D.C., jet was landing. Now, of course, the helicopter was kind of mid-flight. It was not taking off or landing, but the jet was in the process of landing. You look at the crash that is in Philadelphia. That happened right after takeoff, like within 30 seconds or even less than that of taking off. This Toronto crash, right there at the airport, right there at Toronto Pearson Airport, crash. And then the next one that I'm going to talk about that happened in Arizona, once again, landing. These are the times when you have to get everything right, and the pilots have to be paying attention and making good choices, and but accidents happen. So, hello, Diana. How are you? Longtime friend Diana in the chat. Hi, Eddie. Hot toddy for that. Whiskey, tea, and honey. Well, Diana, maybe you don't know, I don't drink, so whiskey is out of the question. The funny thing is I did not have any. Over the past week, even though I was sick, I did not have any tea. Very weird. And I'm allergic to. I can't eat. I'm not allergic to honey. Honey is one of those foods I can't eat, Diana, for digestive reasons, if you can believe it. Can't eat honey. But thanks. I appreciate that. I appreciate the tip. Not to put your suggestion down. It's just, there's just things that I can't or can't do or won't do. Darlene, you definitely have knowledge on airplane crashes. Darlene, it's been like 40 years of reading about plane crashes. And if you don't know, Darlene, I used to have a huge fear of flying. It wasn't I don't know how it developed, but it wasn't in high school. I don't remember ever being afraid, like when my parents and I would go on vacation or anything would fly. I don't know what it was. Late 80s into the early 90s. Maybe it was just because I didn't fly for a long time. There was a period between like early 1987. I didn't take a flight on a jet or a plane of any type between like early 1990 or 1987 until probably April of 95. So I went like over 8 years without flying. And I think that contributed, to, when you're not doing it all the time, maybe you start to think about it a little too much and everything. And the way I decided to get over that, Darlene, was to learn as much about plane crashes as I could. That's how I got over my fear. I mean, I know that it seems like the opposite way going about it, doing it, but that's the way I decided to do it. Well, I'm afraid of getting in a plane and crashing. Well, why do planes crash? What happens? And once you start looking into it, you start realizing how rare it is, even back then. And of course, air travel these days is way safer than it was in the 80s and into the 90s in the United States. Way safer now. But even then it was rare. And you start realizing the kind of freak things that need to all line up for at least a passenger jet. That's really all I'm concerned about, to crash, whether on takeoff or landing or anywhere in between. You find out how rare it is. And, you're more likely to get struck by lightning 7 times. And of course, the drive that you're going to, whether you drive yourself or somebody drives you or you take a taxi, Uber, whatever else, that is way more dangerous than traveling in a plane. But because of course, and I know many of you have been in car wrecks, so you know about how dangerous it can be. But for everybody who hasn't been in a car wreck, you kind of just take it for granted. Well, I'm getting in the car, I'm driving there, I'm just going to get there. And because that always works that way, you don't realize that, well, you know what? That's a lot more dangerous than getting in a plane. So that's how I became an expert. I'm not a pilot. I've never aspired to be a pilot. I don't want to be a pilot. I could even say, even if I won like $1 billion in Mega Millions or whatever, I probably would have a private jet and everything else. But private jets, they are less safe than commercial travel, than if you're like flying American or Southwest. And I have to admit, I probably, I don't know. I might just always fly first class or something like that in a commercial airline, in contrast to flying on a private jet. I know that sounds bizarre, but I've actually, contemplated this. So that's how I just started reading as much as I could about plane crashes. And this was even before the internet got started. So I actually bought books on plane crashes, detailing why planes crashed and everything. And, when there would be a plane crash in the news, I'd watch. I just became, I guess, kind of obsessed with it. And as I've stated many times, though, when you look at plane crashes and why planes crash, there's a lot of similarities between plane crashes and disappearances about how things have to line up in a certain way, because both are rare. All right. Plane crashes are rare. Disappearances are rare. So it takes a unique set of circumstances for both to happen. They're not just happening all, thousands and thousands of times over every day. That's not what's going on. But there's just a specific set of circumstances for each to happen. And that's why when it comes to the investigation of disappearances, my opinion is the police should go about it very much the same way that the NTSB goes about figuring out why a plane fell out of the sky. I think there's some sort of comparison that can be drawn there, even though that we know that's not what police do. Fishing says, I think the wind had a lot to do with it too. In Toronto, yeah, it did. It surely did. The crosswind surely did. And that's probably why it wasn't all level. Probably fishing, yeah. Darlene says, you stretch by educating yourself on the matter. Then way to go. I it's a one way to put it. Thank you. Taylor says, I've been on a private jet several times. Well, look at you, Taylor. They feel scarier than commercial. I can understand that. Takeoff and landing is felt. Yeah, they're very powerful jets. Yeah. They certainly smell better, though. That's fun. Yeah. Yeah. They are, and you can feel it on takeoff for sure, right? They really, really accelerate. Yeah. And I think that's sometimes what gets those pilots in trouble. They think they're flying jet fighters or something. I've never been on a private plane. Like I said, I don't know, because you should know the rates, even though air travel is safe, private jets crash way more than commercial jets do. All right, just as an example, even though it's still safe, it is something that's in my mind. All right, moving on to this other plane crash that happened in Arizona. It was actually a another midair collision, but fortunately, the one plane was able to continue to circle around and land. The two people in that plane lived. They actually landed it. Unfortunately, the two people in the other plane did not. That plane crashed, and those two people got killed. This was at a small airport in Arizona. And what essentially happened is that there was, a slow plane, we'll just call it, they were doing what they call touch and goes, where they're, people practicing their taking off and landings. So you're flying around, you come in, you land, and then you don't stop. You just keep rolling out, you push the pedal down again, and you take off again. And that's, your touch and go landings. That's one of the things that a lot of new pilots have to practice. And they just do this big circle. They take off, fly around, they land, and take off again over and over and over. And well, this plane was doing it. And another plane, which was a lot faster, was also doing that. And the faster plane came up behind the slower plane and hit it. The slower plane was able to fly away from this incident. The faster plane fell out of the sky right there. And it happened on the airport grounds. It was as they were taking off. The fast one came up, hit. The faster one was behind, fell to the ground. Whereas the slower plane was able to come around and then land. Now, what happened here? Well, this goes back to kind of like what I was talking about regarding the DC crash with the helicopter and that plane coming in for a landing. This whole thing about, see and avoid. This is not something, although it sounds good in practice. I mean, hey, we're going to be out there. We're flying around. We're looking for any other jets and helicopters. What better way it sounds like the most logical thing in the world. Unfortunately, we see how many times that doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not a foolproof plan. It is not radar. It is not what they call the TCAS system, which is the avoidance system that all passenger jets have on them. If they're in danger of hitting another jet, this thing will go off and the computer will automatically tell the pilot which way to go and everything. It's not that. And that system works really, really well. But this just using your eyeballs, looking out the windshield, whether at day or night, whether it's a jet or a propeller plane or a helicopter, not foolproof. Not foolproof. Even in a situation where these two planes, propeller planes in Arizona, they're on the same runway, they're flying in the same pattern, it's daytime, and they still hit into each other. Now, my perception is that that was the fast plane's fault. Of course, the NTSB will eventually come to their own conclusion on that. But we have to remember that planes, aren't cars. Of course, planes, you got this, whether it's, you got the wing above or the wing below. Well, either way, that blocks out a lot of what a pilot can see. Of course, if you can't see anything above you, and if it's one of these low slung, the wing is on the bottom of the body of the plane, you can't see anything below you. And of course, when you're driving a car, all you have to do is worry about two dimensions, front and back, left and right. I made this comparison a couple weeks ago that, look at the gauges you have in your average car, and then look at the simplest of propeller planes out there in a Cessna, and you look at all of the gauges in that. One more dimension, which is the up and down dimension, adds a whole wide array of difficulty to the overall, piloting of that machine, driving of that machine. We can get away with what? A speedometer and a tachometer. You don't even necessarily need a tachometer, I guess. A fuel gauge and a couple other things in a car. You add one more dimension for the simplest of propeller planes, and you have like 20 gauges. Just shows you. Of course, with a plane, you have that one more dimension you have to worry about, the up and down. Of course, you still have the front and back and the left and right. Well, now you have the up and down. You're truly in three-dimensional space. Whereas when you're driving, you're only in two-dimensional space. So it's tough. And what you learn also a lot about is you listen, and of course there are YouTube channels devoted to nothing but plane crashes. People analyzing them, and you find out there's a lot of people not following the rules, a lot of people flying with expired licenses, people going up and whether they shouldn't be going up. You would not think that people would do that stuff because, if you get caught in a rainstorm in your car, if the engine goes out in your car, oh well. But if you get caught up in a rainstorm in a little plane, in clouds, or your engine goes out or anything, it's catastrophic. It could be catastrophic. But you still get all of these people making all of these horrible, horrible choices. Parents getting themselves, they're taking their kids up and making all sorts of stupid choices and getting themselves and their kids killed. Entire families in these little propeller planes, stupid decisions. Doesn't have to be that way. But it's amazing how you see it happen over and over and over. Now I'm talking, once again, I'm not talking about commercial jets now. I'm talking about the little propeller planes, Cessnas, that, you could see maybe, fly over your house at like 80 miles an hour once in a while. That's what I'm talking about. So many, private people going up, that's a hobby or something. And how many of those people just make the worst decisions? It's very sad. Let me see what everybody. Darlene says, was on a private plane at 5. Wow. Okay. My first flight was private. My father-in-law had one. I was so scared, white knuckling. Wow. All right. Mine as well. Taylor, I was 29, but made not a difference. Darlene also says first flight on a private plane at 5. Wow. All these, I'm impressed. The rest of us are like, wow. Okay. We got a couple private plane flyers in the chat tonight. That is something. Darlene says her fears have multiplied, unfortunately. I'm sorry to hear that. Explanation, last one. Well, thank you. Hello, everything. What's going on with you? Good to see you, everything 2023. Darlene asks, hey, do you remember about 25 years ago that dad allowed his little boy to fly the plane and they crashed? There's a lot of stories like that, Darlene. The story that I think of is the father. They were trying to do some world record. His little girl was flying. They were trying to fly across the United States, set the record for the youngest person to fly across the United States, and they crashed. Everybody got killed. That, once again, that's one of those things that I'm talking about. Bad decisions. They should have never been up in that weather, ever. Should have not been out in that weather and got killed. That's maybe 25 years ago. CR, what's going on? Hope you get feeling better. About 80%. You can hear these coughing, CR. But certainly better than yesterday. And yesterday was better than the day before. And I'm hoping tomorrow I continue on this path. And certainly I want to get back to going to trivia. By the way, my team finished in 5th place without me last Wednesday. I suppose I could have helped them, but we increased our 1st place lead overall. So that was nice. All right, you're going to catch up everything. I'm glad to hear it. All right, thank you. All right, let's talk about capital punishment. I guess going to show some of my knowledge on this as well. This story just caught, once again, not political. Idaho is one step closer to becoming the first state to use a firing squad as its primary execution method, months ahead of the start of college murder suspect Brian Kohberger's trial. So far, only Idaho, Utah, South Carolina, Oklahoma, and Mississippi allow firing squads for executions. However, the firing squad is not the primary death penalty method used in any of those states, according to data received from the Death Penalty Information Center by the Idaho Capital Sun. House Bill 37 moved to the Senate floor for a vote after passing the Senate Judiciary Rules and Committee on Wednesday, the outlet reported. As of now, lethal injection is the primary execution method in Idaho, as 9 people are currently on death row in the state. Bill sponsor Bruce Skog, who previously pushed for legislation that restored the firing squad as a backup option to lethal injection, argued that the botched lethal injection of condemned serial killer Thomas Eugene Creech last year highlights problems with the method. I, along with many others, believe the firing squad is more certain, has less appellate issues, and is more humane than other forms of execution. Of course, if you consider capital punishment to be humane. Skog previously told a news outlet, Creech was the 4th condemned inmate in the U.S. to survive his scheduled lethal injection in just a few years. All right, so this is on everybody's mind in Idaho because of this trial that's coming up. And of course, Brian Kohberger probably, seemingly, most likely murdered those college students. So in the state of Idaho, he's probably going to be eligible for the death penalty. So they're already thinking about, well, if they're going to execute him, how are they going to do that? And this is why this is a topic. And it very well could be that if he is found guilty and he does get the death penalty, that somewhere down the road, we see him being executed by a firing squad, which, like I said, I'm not here to get into the legal ramifications and the moral ramifications. Does it invade somebody's rights? I'm not here to get into that. But I think we all know that when it comes to capital punishment, the death penalty in the United States, that we thought that the firing squad was something that was kind of behind us. And in fact, of course, lethal injection, which is something that came in the late 20th century, was seen as being a more humane way to introduce to get rid of the firing squad because it was seen as being a little too gruesome. Or, of course, the electric chair. But here we are now, at least in 2025, once again, not getting into the moral and legal ramifications, political football that it is. It very well could be that maybe these states that are going to continue to have the capital punishment, they're going back in the opposite direction. Why? Because of some of these methods, like as it says here, lethal injection, not 100% reliable. And maybe it causes more pain than anybody has really realized. Just because somebody, of course, it's a concoction of drugs that are used to lethally inject people. Maybe they feel more than we realize. And so this is all being studied now, and why we're going back the opposite direction. Of course, I also can't forget the gas chamber, which also has fallen out of favor it seems, for capital punishment, at least in the United States. Yeah, D, you told me you got a laptop. I'm all excited about that. I'm glad you got one. Who are we trying to make capital punishment more comfortable for, the condemned or the spectators? I think this is an important question to ask. I'm not getting into that, Taylor. I'm not getting into that. But this is a topic right now. Now, you should know something that I think. Have you ever heard of the movie The Executioner Song? Came out 70s, early 80s. That was a movie about a guy who was on death row in Utah. His name was Gary Gilmore. How many of you have heard of him? How many of you have heard of, I don't know if it was an actual movie that played in the theaters. It might have been a TV movie, but it was called The Executioner Song, and it was about the true story of this guy, Gary Gilmore, who was on death row. I think he was the last person on death row in any state to be executed by firing squad. Pretty sure. So it's been a while. It's been over 40 years. Now, if you're wondering how they do that, the way they do that is, I think they pick out, you get on a list. If you work at the prison, they'll like take 5 shooters. They will give them guns, but only one of those guns has a real bullet in it. The other 4 have blanks. So when you pull the trigger, it still feels like it's a real bullet, but it's not. So you shouldn't think when they say firing squad, at least in the terms of capital punishment, this isn't like, you think back to like the Nazis or something like that. When we're talking about capital punishment as a form of, sentencing, I guess you'd call it in the United States, it's not like they, give guns to 10 shooters and they all have a bullet and the condemned man gets shot 10 times. That's not how they do it. It's like 5. They're given 5 identical guns, rifles, and only one has a bullet in it. And none of those 5 knows which one has the real bullet in it. They all pull the trigger at the same time. And so they can all walk away and none of them know which one was the actual killer. That's how they do that. So when it comes to the firing squad, it's just one bullet that hits the condemned man or woman. Just so you know. No, darling, no, not 4, but no, they would not shoot him with 4 bullets. No. Yeah. No. That's how they do it. And of course, it's a headshot for this. What if Dylan doesn't hit the person, doesn't kill the person? Well, it can happen. And that may be one of the reasons, Bree, that, the firing squad kind of fell out of favor. It very well could be. I don't know if there's any correct way. I suppose we could do what the French used to do back in the French Revolution days. We could just get the guillotine out. That's why the guillotine was created. We could try it that way. But we have to look at these, lethal injection, not as, why this is probably being an idea. Of course, lethal injection, not as painless, maybe as marketed. Mistakes. Too many criminals don't die the first time around. And then that, the electric chair, kind of the same issue. Of course, Florida has a very famous electric chair. I don't know when it was used last, though, but kind of the same thing. That not 100% effective. But strap the person down, put the thing on their head, you pull the lever, and a lot of people would die, but not everybody. And you can read some real horror stories out there of them trying to execute people and the person catching on fire first and continuing to live and everything, not foolproof. Gas chamber, same thing. That not foolproof, maybe kind of like lethal injection in that it seems like it was quick and painless, but it wasn't. And so this is one of those reasons. Once again, I'm not here to say whether the capital punishment should exist in the United States or not. Now, you should know there's a lot of states that technically have capital punishment, but never use it. California has the death penalty, never uses it. It's still in the books there. They just, if the legislature there wanted to pass a law outlawing again, they could do that. But it's just been simpler that everybody in the judicial system in California has just decided, you know what, we're just not executing everybody's just a lifetime sentence. They're on death row, quote unquote, but they're going to die on death row. They're not going to be executed or anything. And there are several other states. I think Illinois might also be one of the states. There's several states like that we have in the United States, where the death penalty is still in the books. They just refuse to use it. So I think this is all why the firing squad, at least in Idaho, is coming back into fashion at least a little bit. Now, I don't think that here in the United States, of course, as you know, we also used to hang people here in the United States even within the 20th century. And of course, that's not the most foolproof way to kill someone either, but as late maybe as the 1930s, we were still hanging people, capital punishment here in the United States. I don't know when the last person was hung, though. I didn't have that written down. But this is all the reason that, way back, like I said, in the 1700s, the French invented the guillotine. And by the way, where did they get the name the guillotine? The guy who invented his last name was Guillotine, I think. So, and of course, with that, it sure does get that certainly does get the job done. The guillotine. Unfortunately, though, I don't even think the French. I don't think the French even have, even though they invented the guillotine. I don't even think the country of France has the death penalty anymore, even though they invented the guillotine. So it just shows you how things change. It's a very interesting topic. Once again, I'm not here to make any political judgment on that. I realize that, of course, the big fear regarding the death penalty, what happens if you kill somebody and that person ends up being innocent? And of course, given with DNA and everything these days, that could really be, that could really happen. People are, of course, getting exonerated because of DNA all the time, have been in jail for 20, 30 years. And we also know, of course, that DNA catches people after decades who weren't even on police radar. So, if there is an argument to be made that the capital punishment in the United States should be put away, maybe that's the best one. I'm not making argument one way or the other, but DNA, I think, is certainly in the last 30 years has caused everybody to reconsider what we're doing in the area of capital punishment, because it does seem make it more likely that mistakes would be caught. And if you kill somebody, then who is innocent, then it's too late, to change that. So, interesting topic. Charles, Utah and South Carolina have used firing squads recently. All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Charlie. No humidity in Colorado. Yeah. How many states have the death penalty? There you go. 27 people Googling tonight while they're listening. That's nice. Taylor says 189 exonerated death row inmates since 1973, Google says, because of DNA. I believe it. Yeah, it's quite a few. Yeah. And so maybe, like I said, DNA more than maybe any other argument over the years has, I think caused people to reconsider the capital punishment in the United States. And, more than any more than any criminals' rights groups or anything like that. So there you go. There is the capital punishment topic. And like I said, we may talk about that once again if Brian Koberger in Idaho is found guilty and he is given the death penalty. So we may bring that up again. Charlie said, I'm glad I never murdered anybody. Yeah, I'm sure you are, darling. That's a funny thing to type. Okay, let's go on to this. Burned in Cleveland. Cleveland police have arrested a man suspected of torching a car connected to a Warren, Ohio father who is still missing. The Cleveland Fire Arson Unit on Friday, so just a few days ago, charged Nathan Christian Crockett, 28, of Cleveland with arson. The burned out car, a white Buick LaCrosse with dark tinted windows found earlier this month in the 9300 block of Sherwood Road, was registered to a family member of Juar King, a Warren, Ohio man reported missing weeks ago. King was last seen driving the car on February 4th, as reported by a Fox 8 sister station, WKBN. It had been spotted by a license plate reading camera near East Cleveland. Police first learned of the burned vehicle on Tuesday, February 4th. The following day, arson investigators determined the fire had been intentionally set. Arson detectives ultimately identified and arrested Crockett. Warren police are now investigating King's disappearance. Anyone with information on his whereabouts is urged to call detectives at 330-841-2505. Cleveland police are investigating the arson charge. Anyone with information on the arson was asked to call police, Cleveland police, at 216-623-5454. So now I want to read to you the original story regarding Juar's disappearance. The family of Juar King Sr., a 43-year-old Warren man who's been missing since Tuesday, is desperately searching for answers and urging the public to help locate their loved one. He was last seen about 5:15 p.m. Tuesday at a friend's house in Warren, according to his family. When he failed to return home, missed his daily responsibilities, and his phone was turned off, his family knew something was wrong. This is not like him, said Ebony Morgan, King's sister. He has responsibilities. He takes care of his children every day. He has a son who is ill, and he makes sure he's there for him. He takes his daughter to school. When none of that happened and his phone was off, we knew something was wrong. King's oldest daughter, Javanir King, described the family's efforts to find him. We went to Cleveland because his phone was last pinged there. We talked to everyone on the street, and nobody had seen or heard anything. We tried to find any houses that had cameras, only a car shop camera that didn't catch anything, she said. The family searched Cleveland for hours, including trips to 4 or 5 police stations, all of which yielded no results. At one point, they said his phone was pinged near a school in Cleveland, but neither his phone nor his car, a Buick LaCrosse with tinted windows, has been recovered. We don't know where he is. We just want to find him. If the car was stolen, let's find the car. Let's start there. Somebody knows something. The family expressed frustration with the lack of progress in the investigation. We've been to the police department every day. We've done everything we can. We just want answers. We don't know where he is. King's daughter echoed her aunt's sentiments. We're his family. We're his voice. We need to help him. If anyone knows anything, please come forward. The family is focusing on spreading awareness about King's disappearance. They are distributing flyers and reaching out to the media in hopes that someone will come forward with information. We just want him home. He's a father, a brother, and a son. We need him back. That was the original story. And like I said, his car eventually was found in Cleveland, burned to a crisp. And somehow Cleveland police were able to determine that this guy, Nathaniel Crockett, 28 years old, was the person who burned the car. Now, do they have proof he also parked the car there and then burned it? I don't know. Now, what does this seem like to me? What went on here? What is going on here? We have Juar King, who's 43 years old. Family portrays him as a good family man, taking care of his kids and everything. And then how does his car end up in Cleveland getting torched? And you should know Warren, Ohio, is not part of Cleveland. Well, what catches my, this disappearance kind of reminds me of Austin Pivo. And I know it's been a while that I've brought up Austin, but if you'll remember, he got dropped off by his mother at his work, at the boss's house. And then he goes missing, and they're all like, well, we don't know what happened. And we now know that something went on inside that building, that the three guys decided to kill Austin and then take him out and bury him somewhere. Of course, they all got caught. Austin remains were found. All those guys ended up going to jail. This sounds like that to me. When I read a story that in the second paragraph in the original story, it says he was last seen about 5:15 p.m. Tuesday at a friend's house in Warren, but the family's still looking for him, and they're not saying like, well, his friend told us he went here. His friend told us he was headed there. You don't have anything like that. And there have been many stories written about Juar's disappearance and the car being found. In none of these stories is that said. So that always makes me suspicious when he was a friend. I mean, what could it be any more straightforward? Just go to the friend and say, well, what happened? Did he leave? Did he say he was going somewhere? We don't have any of that, which leads me to believe that something happened at that friend's house. Now, is this a friend, or is it just quote unquote a friend? Is it a frenemy? Well, Juar is the one that went missing. And I have to admit, my first inclination in a disappearance like this sounds like some sort of drug thing that went on. Once again, conjecture, just a guess. No facts to support that. But after 360 disappearances featured on Unfound, you kind of start to get a feel for some of these things. And this is, to me, my perception. This is the way it usually goes when it's guys at friend's house, guy goes missing. And the car is missing, and the family's wondering what happened. And you just have no information about, well, all right, he was at John Smith's house. What does John Smith say happened? And you don't have that in any of the articles regarding Juar's disappearance. That is telling. Something for all of you to always, if you're into reading, if you read a disappearance story, a write-up about a recent disappearance, it's one of the things that should always catch your eye. When they say the person was at John Smith's house, but then John Smith is not quoted in the article. Wouldn't it just be easy to go to John Smith? Well, what happened? He was at your house. Where did he say he was going? What was he doing? When you don't see something like that, it should tell you something. And you have this family cruising all over Cleveland. They know his phone pinged up there. And they're not saying anything about his friends trying to find him where he was. So doesn't necessarily mean it's foul play. And Darlene's even bringing that up. I wonder if he overdosed and they hit his body. Could be. and took his car up to Cleveland, hoping they would destroy it so badly that it wouldn't be able to be recognized. That could be. But this does have a drug feel to me, whether overdose situation, drug deal gone bad situation where, somebody shows up with the drug, somebody shows up with the cash, and one of those people decides they want both. Yeah. Charlie says Warren, Ohio is where the mob is, though. Yeah, it is. So I've heard. Don't know. I'm not inclined to this doesn't sound like a mob thing to me. No. Just it's not the way I read it. You got a 28-year-old Nathaniel Crockett. He got caught fairly easily, which seemed to me would fly in the face of my perceptions of the mob. I mean, you burn a car and within it gets found, and within days they identify who did it. That the mob is a little, even these days, I think is a little slicker than that. So this sounds to me like something that was done spur of the moment, which then could lead us back to something, a death of Juar that was unplanned, which could just be violence in the moment, could be overdose, but it does give the idea that this is something that was not planned. Something went down there that nobody totally suspected. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, darling. So we have this. Do I think that they will find Juar? I mean, we have to believe that he is deceased now, very sadly. But just because they found his car burned out does not mean that they will find him. Would have to know more about, did Nathaniel Crockett have some connection to Juar? Did they know each other or something? They're like 15 years difference in age, so they couldn't have gone to school together. Did they have a job together? Is there any connection that can be made between Nathaniel Crockett and Juar? That's probably what they're trying to do, trying to establish right now. If we knew more about that, we could be much more exact about what most likely happened here. You'd be surprised. I worked at that mobbed up moving company in Warren in the 90s. I think I remember that. Now that you mentioned that, Charlie, I think I do remember that. Yeah. Yes. Okay. I forgot all about that. Happy you got out of there alive, Charlie. All right, let's move on to this. And this is the Florida mystery solved story that, well, wait a minute. I have to answer a question tonight. And I got this in the chat. And this question came from, who was it? It came from, let me see here. From Joanne. Joanne asked me in the group, in the Facebook group, this very interesting question. This is one of those, I don't know if it's rhetorical or what. Everybody, you can get in on the answering to this question as well. I have a question for tonight. What is your opinion? Are there more doors or wheels in existence on the earth? What is your opinion? Are there more doors or wheels on planet Earth? That's a wild question. I even asked her, I got to ask, where did you get the idea for this question? She said, my brother asked during a family luncheon this past weekend. We all had different answers. And she told her family, well, I'm going to ask Ed. All right, what do I think? Well, a door, not to get really, really technical with this, but what kind of doors are we talking like regular, doors that you have in your house? Are we talking about trap doors? Are we talking about sliding glass doors? Are we talking about, this, the kind of doors? I forget. Rotating, that you find at like some fancy buildings that, turns. We're talking about doors and elevators, on and on and on. On the other hand, when it comes to wheels, I realize that we're automatically all going to think about cars. But then we also have to think about lawnmowers and wheelbarrows. And are we talking about wheels like on Matchbox cars and Hot Wheels cars and like model cars? A lot of different things fall under the general definition of door or wheel. And garage doors and everything else. Here's what I would say. I think for us as Americans, it's very easy for us to think that there are more wheels. Why? Because we have a car culture. The United States is not a country that is fully embraced, public transportation. Of course, there's we have a pretty good subway system in New York City, have something like that in Chicago and everything. Yes, most cities have public transportation for buses and everything, but we have a car culture. One of the things that always reminds me of this is when I watch soccer on Paramount Plus from Europe, where many more people use public transportation and trains and buses and everything. You look at a stadium out in the United States, a big sports stadium in the United States. Of course, it has all this parking, and they have parking garages and everything around the stadium. So because why? Most people, when they show up at the stadium, they're driving there. Whereas you look at these stadiums in Europe, whether it's in Italy or England or Germany or soccer stadiums, usually they don't have that kind of stuff around their stadiums. Why? Because most people go to those games using public transportation. Train drops them off, subway drops them off, short place, ways away, and they walk to the stadium. And when they're done, they walk back to the train station, bus station, whatever else. There's no reason to have any parking garages. So I think from an American standpoint, because we are so car oriented, we automatically think, well, there's more wheels than doors in the world because we see so many cars. I mean, we have people in the United States who collect cars and collect all sorts of things, on and on and on and on and on. But we have to remember that the car culture that exists in the United States, I guess we maybe even to a lesser extent in Canada, or does not exist in the rest of the world. And we have, of course, cities where people don't own any vehicles. They're never going to own any vehicles. And that would then cut down on the number of wheels in that country, in that city, and everything else. Whereas doors, although houses may be different styles and sizes and everything else, all houses need doors. All buildings need doors. And you start thinking about a lot of cultures where there are no cars, but you still have all these buildings, whereas you don't have any cultures where there are vehicles or things like that and no buildings. And of course, even cars have doors. So I'm going to say that there are more doors than wheels. Because even if you get down to, like, once again, if you start thinking about Matchbox cars and Hot Wheels, those little cars have doors on them. So Joanne, if you're out there, I think I'm going with doors. I think. Over wheels, I think. Let's see what everybody. So what does everybody else think? Wheels. Everybody. I was on the right side. Darlene says doors. Stephanie wheels. Kathy wheels. D wheels. What a question. I know everything. Darlene says a door is a door. Garage doors. Roller skates. What doors? Toy cars also have doors. My family certainly has more wheels than doors by a long shot. I get that, Taylor, but once again, we just have to keep in mind that that's not the way it is for most of the rest of the world. Of course, most places people can't afford cars, but they have a house with doors. They'll have a little building or a hut with a door or a couple doors, but they may never own a vehicle. A house has approximately 20 doors, any doors, anywheres, all doors, all wheels. There's Joanne. There's my answer, Joanne. Would any disc that spring on an axle be considered a wheel? Very technical, true story. Wheelchairs, gurneys, because that would add gears. Yeah, I did the same bus thing in Vegas last year for a hockey game, and it was fantastic. Hey, Ron, how are you tonight? Storm doors and door walls and entry doors, we think the same. Dang. Think about counting storm doors, car doors, all the kids' toys they ride on. I'm here, doors for the win. I'm going with doors. Even for me, I have a car that has four wheels, but it also has four doors, so they cancel each other out. But then I have, how many doors do I have in my condo? I mean, this condo isn't even that big. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I have 13 doors in this condo, at least. And it's not even that big. No, 13, 14. I got the other one over there, 14. 14 doors in my condo. Whereas my car only has 4 wheels. So that's how I work that all out. Joanne. And like I said, we have to consider like Venice, everybody goes by boats there. And like I said, a lot of places, nobody has cars, nobody has toys with wheels on them, nothing. So I'm going with doors. All right, getting back. So great question, though. Such a kind of philosophical, I guess a little scientific. How about every pulley wheel on the serpentine belt? Those count too, I guess. Is that a wheel or is that a pulley, though, Charlie? It's a kind of wheel. It's a very technical type of wheel. Is that a wheel? I don't know. Nobody calls it a wheel. People call it a pulley. I realize that it's circular and it's on an axle, but does that make it a wheel or is it a pulley? If it was a wheel, people would call it a wheel, but people don't call them wheels. People call them pulleys. So there you go. All right, moving on to Altoona, Florida. Now, some of you may remember that we covered a disappearance from that area. Lacey Buenfil went missing from Altoona, Florida, but this is for other reasons. I'm talking about this. More than 40 years ago, a body was discovered along the side of a dirt road near Lake Dorr in Altoona, Florida. There's an Altoona, Pennsylvania, by the way, too. For Detective Zachary Williams of the Lake County Sheriff's Office, being handed a case file of a cold case passed down through the generations was a daunting task he was ready to face. This case, like so many other cases, So many detectives have put so much effort into this. I was in a fortunate enough position to push this closer to the finish line. Beginning in 2023, he started working with Othram. Everybody knows Othram at this point, the DNA lab, doing genetic testing out of Texas to identify Judy Doe. Othram worked alongside the sheriff's office for a year. It's terribly hard to work a homicide investigation if you don't know who the victim is. Through trial and error, the two entities narrowed down the identity of a Judy Doe to match that of a missing Arkansas teenager, Rebecca Sue Hill. Hill went missing, and her body was found on April 18th, 1984, off a dirt road near Lake Dorr in Altoona. So she went missing from Arkansas. She's found here in Florida in Altoona, which is not up near the Florida. It's not over in there in the Panhandle, like going over there toward Arkansas. Altoona is just a couple hours north of me. Hill went, okay, Williams was one who called Hill's siblings who had been thought dead in Arkansas, speaking with the family and giving them a little bit of closure that in this case they didn't know they needed. It's been a phenomenal experience, Williams said. According to the sheriff's office, remains found in Little Rock, Arkansas were misidentified by Hill's father, although her siblings disagreed at the time. More than likely, it was just closure for the family to move on to the next chapter. It led to our remains not being identified for 40 years. So it was a surprise to her family when they got the call from the Lake County Sheriff's Office. Her brother, Eddie Hill, there was a drag racer named Eddie Hill, said the last words his sister said to him were, "Please don't leave me," before he left for the military. As a big brother, you know that hurts, Hill said. Now, 40 years later, I get kicked in the gut again knowing that this is she. He doesn't know what brought his sister to Lake County or even to the state. We don't know how she got to Florida. We don't know when she got to Florida or anything like that. We don't know why. Now that the remains have been identified, Williams says he feels confident naming a person of interest in her case, Michael Ronning. Ronning, Ronning, a convicted murderer and suspected serial killer, had told prosecutors he had information about a body found in Lake County, but he requested the death penalty not to be considered in exchange for telling investigators he would eventually die in prison. He was in Lake County at the time of Rebecca's death. He was stopped by the Umatilla Police Department a day before her body was discovered. From what we can tell, he left the area of Lake County within about 10 days of the body being found. All of those things circumstantially do lead us to look at him. Now begins the process of working with the Little Rock Police Department to gather more information about Hill and how she could have been connected with Ronning, with the hope being to close the decades-old case. Hill says they're working to find a resting place for his sister. Now that we know what's happened to her, we hope we can lay her at rest and at peace. I just wish I was there to help her. With one person identified, there's still many families out there hoping for answers. There's upwards of 1,000 people just like this young girl that are yet to be identified. It's been a struggle to identify them in the past due to limitations of existing technology, but there's new forensic technology available. Really eager to get this deployed more broadly in Florida. All right, so everybody's still doing the wheels and doors. I knew that I would get everybody going tonight. That was pretty accurate prediction on my part. D says, but the ones that were ID messes up other missing. It sure does, D. Now, two things that are interesting to me that caught my attention in this article. First of all, two interesting points. First of all, the family was very, very sure that if she was dead, that she died in Arkansas. That I guess if she were going to be found, she would be found in Arkansas. Obviously, they were wrong. I think this is something that we have to remember for all of Unfound's disappearances, that the ones that are still unsolved, that is, that just because a disappearance happens in Texas doesn't mean the remains are going to be found in Texas. There's a lot that goes into that. And it's also why if you have a disappearance that occurs in California, that unidentified remains that are found in North Carolina, which of course is on the totally opposite side of the United States, you can never rule out anything. You never want to get into a situation where you're so narrow-minded thinking, well, the person went missing in California, so that means that person is going to be found in California, whether dead or alive, or Florida, or any other particular state. This is what proves that, because like I said, although if you go up into the panhandle of Florida and Arkansas really aren't that far away from each other. But this is not where Rebecca was found. She was found down in the meaty part of Florida. Like I said, just a couple miles or a couple hours north of me. If you're wondering where Altoona, Florida is, it's kind of up there near where the Villages are. If you've ever heard of that huge retirement community called the Villages that's in the center of Florida, Altoona is not far from there. So that's the first thing. They were just thinking, yeah, she's probably dead. She's there in Arkansas. They were wrong. The other thing is that the father misidentified his own daughter. And I think that the rest of the family in this article gets it probably pretty accurate, in that at some point the father just wanted it to be over and say, you know what? We know she's dead. I know she's dead. All right. I'm not totally sure if the remains in front of me are she or not, but emotionally, mentally, I just want to move on from this. And that's the way this father chose to do it. I have to believe this is common. Now, that hasn't happened with any of Unfound's disappearances, to my knowledge. Of course, when I get to them, they're all unsolved anyway. So, but probably this goes on more than we probably could ever realize. I think probably our common sense would tell us, well, this would never happen. What kind of parent's going to do that? What kind of parent is going to misidentify remains on purpose? Happens. It's why disappearance is so complex. So complex. And the ambiguous grief, the unique kind of grief that goes on with disappearances that you don't see with murders. So, I like I said, I have to believe this is common. When I say common, I don't mean it's happening every day, but I mean common compared to I think what the perception is. No parent would ever do that. I think that's the public perception, but it happens. And it happens a lot when compared to the idea that nobody thinks it happens at all. And as Dee pointed out, this can really mess things up. It really, really can. Yeah. So those are the two interesting points. Now, moving on to the serial killer, my perception is we haven't covered that many disappearances on Unfound where I think that a serial killer was involved. Of course, we had the I'm going to have to look it up. I have to look her name up. Hold on. Of course, we had Debbie Lowe, who went missing down in Pompano Beach. And the belief is that the serial killer, Gerard Schaefer, killed her. Why? Because he was friends with her parents. And it's believed that she was walking to school one day and he stopped by, picked her up. She was never seen again. Her books were found in a, I think, was it a post office box or one of these mails? Books were found in something like that, where you can mail letters, like pull the, just one of these boxes sitting on the street. You pull the thing down, slip the letter in. Her books were found, I think, in one of those. And she was never seen again. But it makes all the sense in the world that Gerard Schaefer killed her. But other than that, I don't know if we've really been challenged and had to think about, a serial killer situation. I know some people, of course, with the Colonial Parkway murders, if we still want to call them that, are thinking that that one guy now did all of them. I'm still not inclined to believe that, but some people believe that. But it just has not been a common topic. So this is also what sticks out to me regarding this particular story. Kathy said, was it a trash? Wasn't a post office. It was a trash can. All right. Thank you, Kathy. Books. Yeah. And Debbie Lowe's books were found in a trash can. Yeah. All right. Thank you for correcting me, Kathy. So you can look that up. So once again, DNA doing its job, identifying a girl who went missing from Arkansas, even though her father said she had been identified years before that. We also have to realize, we also have to think about this. Before DNA came along, how many parents misidentified remains that's still in the books? How many mistakes do you think are out there? Probably quite a few. Quite a few. That's also, and that stuff will probably never be corrected. Remains that were found, family said, yep, that's our daughter, and gets, written into the books, and it's a mistake. I'm guessing there are many of those. It's just this one, luckily, has gotten fixed through DNA. I'm guessing many will not be fixed, very sadly. And as Dee says, that really messes everything up. It certainly does. Because it could be there's a family out there looking for their daughter who was misidentified as somebody else's daughter. They're still looking, and actually their daughter was found, but she was Jane Doe, but somebody else identified her as Barbara Smith, and Barbara Smith goes into the ground buried. How are you ever going to fix that? How are you ever going to figure out that mistake was made? I have no idea. No idea. All right, one more thing before we finish tonight, and that is Steve Panky did write me a letter this past week, and I did ask him, he did answer one of my questions. I'm going to read this answer to you. He writes some other things that I can't get into. I had asked him about, Steve, if you're innocent, why did you come forward? I finally got around to ask him that, like, point blank. Of course, I've been going through these materials that I've been telling you about, this discovery material stuff. Why did I come forward? Here's what he writes. Of course, he claims that he did not kill Janelle Matthews. I know many of you think he did. But here's his answer to this question. So, Steve, obviously you didn't, the way I put it to him in a past letter was, Steve, you're saying you're innocent, so it means you didn't know anything about Janelle's disappearance. Then why did you come forward? It's a good question, right? Here's what he wrote. As info came through the media, I remembered from 1976, 1977, remember Janelle was murdered in 1984. I remembered troubling conversations at the Sunnyview Church. I was concerned, real or imagined, that her remains might be at the new Raymer property, I guess, associated with this church. I had a 5-year-old son, and if something happened to him, I would want someone to come forward. Do unto others as you would want them to do to you. I had misdemeanor charges pending. I assumed what worked with pastoral privilege in the 1981 Steve Adams case would work in. Again, I'm going to have to ask him about that. Remember, Steve was claiming pastoral privilege. That must be something else not connected to him. I have to look it up. He then says, after my face-to-face interview with the FBI agent Lyon in 1984/85, I believe Janelle's disappearance was kids on kid neighborhood related by what Agent Lyons said. I felt great, slept better, not my issue. Then, as far as phase one, as you will, initial thoughts, I was done. But as months dragged on, I wondered why in the FUCK, the Greeley PD couldn't break older friends. Kids on kids, was this really a neighborhood issue? That is his explanation. And so I guess what he's saying is that when he was part of the Sunnyview Church, he heard things there that disturbed him. And in the media, he found out that Janelle's family was also a member of that church. And he became concerned because of what he experienced while he was at that church. Somebody at that church could have harmed Janelle. And that's why he's saying he came forward. I know a lot of you think it's BS. But I asked him, that's what he wrote. And then I asked him, maybe a lot of people forget this. Remember, the day before Janelle went missing, he was arrested in downtown Greeley for having an argument or getting into a tussle or something with someone at a bank there. And I asked him about that. And this is what he said. I was arrested on December 19th, 1984 for disturbing the peace at the Norbel Credit Union, union president, Alan Schultz. And then he goes on to say some things about Alan Schultz that I do not know are true or not. So I can't make them public at this point, but they aren't very flattering. So that's what he said regarding this. Why did he come forward? He heard something when it was at the church in the 70s that concerned him, that somebody at the church could have harmed Janelle. But then when he went and talked to police, he kind of got the idea that this was like kids on kids stuff. So I was like, I'm probably completely wrong about this. But then he started to question everything when, well, why isn't it being solved? If kids did this, can't you just solve this immediately? And of course they didn't. And then I think that, according to him, is what then brought him back into it, thinking maybe my idea about the church theory was not so crazy at all. So let's see what everybody, Maureen, boy, you're getting in late, Maureen, but good to see you. His comment is extremely vague. I don't know if it's vague. I think this is pretty good for Steve. Steve was never his pastor's dad. We all know that now, Kathy. Maureen, I thought he did it until I learned a couple weeks ago that the parents moved to the Philippines 2 years later. Well, I'm still planning on doing a series. Like I said, I have these discovery materials that have been eye-openers, and I'm going to put together a series that is eventually going to come out. And being that I'm feeling better again, maybe I can start working on that. Taylor, he really doesn't help dig himself out of anything, does he? No. The Matthews family didn't join that church until after Steve no longer attended there. That's true, Kathy. He never says anything that overly incriminating, but he certainly never says anything that gets him off the hook either. Yeah, well, Taylor, he said he didn't do it. That's something. To me, he talks in circles. Taylor, I don't think he does talk in circles. He may be lying, but I don't think he talks in circles. And, and it's interesting you think, that people say he never says anything overtly incriminating everything. That is the main thing about all this. As much as Steve Panky talks, he hasn't had a slip of a tongue. And no, I do not consider the footprints raking thing a slip of the tongue. A lot of people knew that. Now that I've read the discovery materials, a lot of people knew that. It's amazing. All this talking he does hasn't slipped up once. To me, that is something. All right, so there's the Steve Panky letter to finish out tonight. As far as Friday goes, I'm not sure what we're doing yet Friday. It's going to be a surprise. It may be a new episode. It may be another on hiatus, but I've talked to enough people within the last week or so to know that very, very close to being on the edge of new episodes coming out. I'm really working hard to make that happen. Of course, I've been sick for the last week. Maybe I could have made it happen even more quickly, but that's not the way it worked out this past week. But that's all I got for you tonight. Man, great show. Covered a lot. Talked about my sickness. Doors versus Wheels. Steve Panky. Capital Punishment. Burned car in Cleveland. Stuff coming up, with the next Unfound now and everything. Got a lot of stuff for free tonight. Man, I am so dang generous. All right, I'm joking around. Thank you so much, everybody. Give this video a thumbs up before you leave tonight. Join this channel, and I will. An episode's coming out on Friday. Just not sure what it's going to be, but it'll be 2 p.m. Eastern on Friday. I can guarantee you that. Good night. Keep your heads on swivels. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me.